The philosopher Charles Taylor has a book, kind of a massive tome, and I'm plowing my way through it, and it's going to be probably several weeks before I finish it. But in any event, the book is called A Secular Age. And I've been thinking as I read this book about what it means to live in a secular age. Now, Taylor's argument, I think, is very simple and in a way quite elegant. His argument is that until pretty recently, in some respects, you can say this is even within our lifetime, but perhaps it goes a little further back. But until fairly recently, the West was defined not so much by Christianity as by Christendom. And what does Christendom mean? Christendom means that we're living in a society where the whole architecture of the society, the way it is set up, its institutions, but also its norms and practices, society is inextricable from Christianity. It's not just that the Constitution has a Christian foundation. It's that Christianity is, you may say, baked into the warp and woof, the structure, the operations of the whole society. And this was true of European societies. It was also true of American society. It's something, for example, that Tocqueville noticed. And what Charles Taylor argues, and I think this is by and large right, is that we no longer live in Christendom. Christendom has died. Now, it doesn't follow by any means that Christianity has died, but what Taylor's getting at is that it means something totally different to be a Christian now than it did, for example, for yours. I won't say mine because I grew up in India, the situation's different, but let's say for your great-great-grandparents and their forebears. So now we have a Christianity that no longer dominates the institutions of our society. On the contrary, some of us would point out that some institutions, powerful institutions of society, appear to be anti-Christian, certainly removed from Christian foundations, don't accept Christian premises. Christian premises are no longer taken for granted. And even courts have read our Constitution, which might have had a Christian foundation, have sort of tried to move away from that foundation. So now we're living in a society. So living in a secular society means that Christianity is now one option among others. People can see alternative ways of life. And see those ways of life not only as worthwhile, as contributing to human flourishing, but also as moral. In other words, they're embracing an idea of morality that seems detached from perhaps its original Christian foundation. Now, Taylor's point is that this has happened. It can be seen as a loss. In fact, Taylor admits, and he describes in some detail, a lot of the great things that Christendom produced. I mean, it's only the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, to say that it produced the Cathedral of Notre Dame and the Cathedral of Chartres and the magnificent work of Michelangelo and marvelous Christian thinkers and philosophers and artists. So that was the great manifestation of Christendom. And it's not surprising that some people will say, in effect, I would rather live in the 18th century or the 14th century or even the 5th century. In other words, I would rather live in an age where Christianity consumed and dominated the whole society, in which it was almost unimaginable to live outside of it. Taylor's point is, however, that we can think that way. We can be nostalgic for an earlier Christendom, but we have to live in the world that we live in. And so we have to devise a Christianity that is for today, for the 21st century, a Christianity in a secular society. And he goes, look, it's not all that remarkable or even new. He goes, first of all, look at people who grew up in other cultures. And here, of course, I think of myself, but many others. Even in Venezuela, where Debbie grew up, yes, you have Christianity, but you also have other options, different forms of Christianity, people who are lapsed Christians, and then, of course, people living in the Amazon rainforest who have a completely different cosmology and a different worldview. In India, where I grew up, Hindus are the majority, Muslims number two, the Sikhs, the Jains, the Buddhists, so many other types of ways of being religious, or in some cases not religious. And so Christianity has to sort of make its way in this broader, pluralistic, and to some degree even unfamiliar and alien territory. And then Taylor also gives the example of the early Christians. Before Constantine converted to Christianity, this was in the early 4th century AD, the early Christians were a minority. They were living in Greece. They were living in Rome. They were scattered across the ancient world. But these were societies dominated by pagan religions. The Greek and Roman religions were fairly similar with different names. But of course, Christians were in no way the dominant society. And so Taylor's point is that, look, we shouldn't be too depressed over the way things are now. We've been here before. Christianity actually found a way not only to survive, but to thrive in pluralistic societies. And there's no reason to believe it can't do so now.